Okay, well, hi everybody. I'm Jennifer Couch. I'm from the National Cancer Institute, but I think like a lot of people here, I have a lot of different hats, right? And one of them is that I'm also the NIH Citizen Science and Crowdsourcing Coordinator. And I also work with the Office of Data Science Strategy to promote engaging a broader community of solvers. And I'll talk through some opportunities in the biomedical citizen science and crowdsourcing and sort of broader engagement strategies space. But I think before we get going, maybe we'll just let everybody that's on the line now introduce yourselves. And just so you know, this is going to be recorded, and so that people can watch later. And I'm going to talk for roughly a half hour-ish, so we'll have plenty of times for Q&A. But while I'm presenting, I can't see the chat. So if you want to interrupt or anything, try, you're going to have to like use audio to get my attention or something. Otherwise, leave it in the chat and we'll discuss at the end. So maybe if we can just introduce ourselves here down the row of faces.
Well, I guess I'll go first. I'm Chris Sunderick. I'm a AAAS fellow in Jennifer's group, and very pleased to be here working with Ellen Mintz on this citizen science initiative.
Great, and Jackie and Aaron, I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves quick.
Sure, I'm Erin Walker. I'm the communications lead for the Office of Data Science Strategy at NIH, and I'll let Jackie go next.
And I am Jackie, and I am, my phone picked right now to ring. I'm a communications specialist with the Office of Data Science Strategy at NIH.
Okay, and I see three more. Oh, yay, a camera. Go ahead, Zhongwei.
Hi, Zhongwei from the Mayo Clinic. I can register last minute by coming across a tweet from a colleague. I'm an informatics assistant professor and have remote experience, interest in citizen science by working on an Amazon product review mining project years ago. And I still remain interested. So glad to be here and learn more about it.
Great.
Yeah, this is David Ghebreyesus. Actually, I used to work at the NIH on the BioWolf HPC system. So I'm very much interested in knowing, biomedical sciences and how this works. So that's why I joined.
Great. And Deanna? Deanna, if you're talking, you're muted. Or stepping away to deal with one of those things that we all have to deal with here in our exciting virtual lives at the moment. Okay, I think that's it, right? I don't see anybody else down. Oh, no, Carla.
Hi, my name is Carla. I work at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. And this just sounded like an interesting presentation, so I thought I'd join.
Cool, thanks. Okay, I'll go ahead and talk, and you guys interrupt by audio if you need, because again, for whatever reason, I cannot seem to share my screen effectively and see the chat at the same time. So go ahead and interrupt if you need, otherwise we'll have plenty of time for discussion at the end. Okay, so I am going to talk through some aspects of citizen science and crowdsourcing as they apply in our biomedical research world. And every time I use the word biomedical, I get some people that sort of bristle at that being used as a broad word here, right? Because does it cover behavioral research? Yes, it does. Does it cover biology? Yes, it does, right? It covers the whole spectrum. So I'm just using that as a shorthand for all of the stuff that NIH covers, right? And NIH supports research across this whole continuum here of everything from technology development and basic data science up through basic mechanistic understanding of the biology that underlies health and disease, and risk assessment and screening and translational research and the impact of the environment and population science and behavioral research, right? And all of that research can benefit and has in various ways from crowdsourcing and citizen science approaches. And that's because our research world, you guys know way better than I do, is complicated and vast, and we need all the skills and the data and the insights and the creativity that we can get to forward the research that we all know is important in this space. So I'm going to talk about citizen science and crowdsourcing here, and I want to just get some definitions kind of out of the way, because I think sometimes the words like citizen science in particular, they get described in a lot of different ways. And so the way that I'm using them here is under this kind of big broad banner of open innovation, or engaging a broader community of solvers, right? And so that means things like community-based participatory research that we've used for a really long time in the biomedical research sphere, where a community that is, a subject of a study works directly with the researchers in those programs to, advise in the design of the trial, for example, or the design of the intervention strategy, maybe participate in the data collection, that sort of thing. But often in the past, this has meant that members of those communities sit on advisory boards, or they're advisors to those projects. But more and more, we're seeing those communities and those researchers come together in partnership. And that's really more what I'm talking about here when I use the phrase citizen science, which is a more partnership model of the public and researchers working together in a big variety of ways. Citizen science is just kind of a big banner for an approach to research that involves partnering with the public in some way. And then crowdsourcing is just usually thought of as a way to parcel out a big problem or a big challenge or project into smaller pieces, right? And work with the crowd to solve something. But that crowd can be a really big crowd like the public, or it can be a small crowd, a crowd of experts, or a crowd of people with a particular knowledge sphere, for example. Can be very directed or undirected, and various degrees of passive and active. Crowds can be paid, or they can be volunteer, right? So there's a lot of different ways that crowdsourcing is used and has been used in the biomedical space. And then I've put kind of all these other words around here, human computation and challenges and prizes and quantified self and hackathons and all these things. And I'll touch on a number of those in the examples that I'm going to show here. But the point is that all of these methods, all of these approaches really get at the same thing, which is bringing in the creativity and insights and things that come when you reach out to a broader community to work together to solve problems. So I think of citizen science as having some kind of underlying guiding principles. The projects that we see that work well tend to follow these general principles. And the first one is that people are creative, and they can provide not just data, right, but the insights and the context that come along with that data. So if you imagine somebody who is living day to day with a disease, progressing hourly and daily through that disease journey, they have contextual information and insights into the progression of that disease that just don't come along with something like an intermittent doctor visit or a clinical record. And so that context, those insights are as valuable as that data. And then second, people are eager and able to solve problems if we give them the right tools and the right opportunities. And that's not just that, people can go in and do tasks, but people are incredibly good at solving puzzles or lending creativity or insight or, other sort of creative approaches to solving things. And they like to work together. They like to compete and to collaborate, and providing the right sort of technological interfaces, but also the right kind of community can really bring that creativity into the research endeavor. And then third, their patients and healthy people are often really motivated to share personal health data under the right circumstances. They want to know that it's going to benefit maybe them, their families, people like them with, who are going to come after them with this same disease or condition. And they want to, they often want to do it in a particular way, but there's generally a high interest in sharing information and sharing insights. And then obviously biomedical research is not the same as, like astronomy or ecology or other places where we see a lot of citizen science efforts, right? This is often people's personal health data that we're talking about. And so there are some unique issues here, and citizen science programs need to take those into a thought when you're building a citizen science or a crowdsourcing project. So one of the ways that we have seen for a long time, crowdsourcing to work in the biomedical space is through the use of this challenge prize mechanism. And I'm showing you here a slide from Taylor Gilliland, who's the NIH Challenge Coordinator. These are challenges that NIH has launched in the last year. And you can see that they cover, so a challenge prize is, instead of a grant, a challenge prize is we put a challenge out there, people offer up solutions, and then the money goes to a winner or winners, rather than, say, a grant that you guys are familiar with, where we would give out a grant for a plan and you would carry out research over the course of several years. In this case, the money's given out at the end to the winner or winners of the challenge. And so you can see that these challenges cover a wide range of things, everything from sort of assay development and clinical device design, educational ideas and essays and that sort of thing. But a lot of challenges are data science heavy. So for example, because that's the kind of thing that you can do without a lot of upfront capital. So, somebody can enter into a competition to generate software or do an analysis of some sort without having to spend a lot of money on reagents, for example. And so data science tends to lend itself to this challenge mechanism pretty well. And so you see things like the metadata automation challenge that we put out earlier this year. And the idea there is, for artificial intelligence and things to work, we need really big gold standard data sets, really well annotated, annotated with lots of metadata and in a very consistent way, data sets. And that takes a lot of human time to do that when we get data from different sources and we're trying to bring in the annotation and homogenize the annotation across those data sets to make them into those gold standard data sets that everybody wants. Putting all of that metadata on there takes humans a bunch of time. And so can we automate that semi-automated? And so that challenge was to design automated or semi-automated methods to fill in the missing metadata on some data sets. So sometimes these challenges get really big. So this one I'm showing you here is the Cancer Grand Challenges. It's an international set of challenges. This is put out jointly by the National Cancer Institute and Cancer Research UK. So they're focused on really big issues in cancer. They have an advisory board and patient advocates and things that help them decide what these grand challenges are every couple of years. And you can see that the prize money is pretty sizable on these. And they're done in phases, right? People apply with an idea, and then that's narrowed down to a set of people who can then apply to take part in the challenge, and then prizes are given out at the end. And in this case, these are meant to be fairly large, transformative kind of approaches involving multidisciplinary teams, and obviously in this case, international teams. So you can see, for example, that the targets in this year's set of challenges and the due date for ideas, the initial stage to these is coming up here in April, I think. So you can see that they cover a big range of very difficult topics in the cancer space, right, for which we need transformative ideas. This is an interesting project that took advantage of we've run lots and lots of challenges, data science challenges over the years, and a lot of them have been done under the banner of the DREAM challenges, right? So DREAM is Sage BioNetwork's collection of challenges, and that includes things like that metadata challenge that I just showed you. But in doing that, they've built up a platform and a set of resources over the years that are used to run these challenges. And this mini DREAM challenge and the materials that were developed along with it were developed by a group of people across these two consortia here, the Physical Sciences and Oncology Network and the Cancer Systems Biology Consortium. And what they wanted to do was use that DREAM platform and that kind of challenge idea to engage students in the idea of learning data science, but learning it, in a fun and interesting and real world kind of way. And so they used it to think about genomic and clinical data as it relates to cancer metastasis, and used this challenge idea, and they generated a bunch of educational materials around that are available as well. Okay, so I mentioned crowdsourcing can be, the crowd can be the public, but it can also be experts. And so this is just an example of that kind of a project called Crowds Cure Cancer. And the idea here is to take the problem to the crowd, if you will, right? So in this case, the crowd is radiologists. And the problem is that, again, in order to do AI on these big data sets, we need lots and lots of well-annotated gold standard data. And in this case, these are medical images. The Crowds Cure Cancer folks take these to, for example, a radiology conference, and they just ask radiologists to stop by and spend a few minutes annotating some of these images so that they can build up this shareable data set. So there are a lot of projects out there now that facilitate and work off of where the public sharing personal health data, right? And the idea here is to not just collect the kind of data that we would collect in a clinical trial, but collect, again, some of that contextual data or some real-time collected data, sometimes involving things like wearable sensors or patient-reported outcomes and that sort of thing. And so this slide just shows a number of examples in that area. The peer promise for engaging everyone responsibly has evolved into a whole suite of these methods and a platform where researchers and the public can come together and partner around topics of interest, often in the area of rare diseases. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the All of Us research program, which is aiming to build up this large community of people that are contributing a large amount of personal health data, both medical records, but also information about themselves in an effort to build up a base of data that's representative of the American public. And then you see projects like PregSource, where pregnant women who are already sharing a lot of information with each other in chat groups, for example, about things like sleep or weight gain, and they're wondering what's normal or what's average or that sort of thing. PregSource is a place where they go and share that information. It's collected up and in a way that researchers can use it, but the women that are contributing the data get information back about sort of where they fit in the averages and that sort of thing. The Empower project here down at the bottom is a project where Parkinson's patients work with researchers to collect up this kind of, again, sort of day-to-day information that using sensors and patient-reported outcomes to enhance Parkinson's disease research. And then the one down in the lower left corner, the Metastatic Breast Cancer Project, is a program. And there's a variety of these now. This is just the first one that this group at the Broad did. And it's a program where they take the burden of data sharing off of the patients. And this is something that maybe people don't think about right away, but if you are somebody who's got metastatic breast cancer, you're already dealing with quite a lot in your life. And if you want to share all of your data, as people often do with researchers, because you want the research to accelerate, you've got to go around to lots of different doctors and hospitals and clinics and wherever it was you were treated and get all of that data. And it's often in lots of different formats, and it's, you've got to sign all sorts of papers everywhere. And it's a big burden to collect up that data. And then where do you share it, right? So the Metastatic Breast Cancer Project gives people a platform where they just go in and go through a consent process and then list all of these data sources, and the project goes out and pulls the data from all of those different sites and then makes it available to researchers. This next slide just shows a couple of examples of this style of sort of community engaged or community participatory research, where both of these projects I've chosen here because they were not just community involved research, but they were both projects that were initiated by the community rather than by the researchers. So both of these projects involve partnerships between researchers and local communities. In the one case, a set of tribes in the West, and another a community that was living near a Superfund site in the Southwest. And both of those groups partnered with researchers directly to do biomedical research projects that were important in those communities. In one case, dealing with using traditional tribal practices to address issues of addiction, and in the other case, using science to better understand the exposure that the community was facing in terms of contamination in the groundwater and the food they were eating. So a lot of this kind of research is supported through this program here called Partnerships for Environmental Public Health. So this is run by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, Liam O'Fallon's program. And this program supports a wide range of these kind of environment and biomedical research projects. And a lot of those are community engaged or community participatory research. This program, the Science Education Partnership Award, a lot of our crowdsourcing and citizen science programs are focused on accomplishing research, and they often have kind of an education or outreach component to them, but their major focus is on the scientific research. The SEPA program, the main focus here is on education, and so the idea is, you know, using cutting-edge biomedical research, including citizen science and crowdsourcing, to bring that to the K-12 experience through these partnerships. And you can see from this slide that they cover a huge range of different scientific topics and in areas across the country. And I've just showed up in the upper right there, Barcode Long Island as an example of a program where high school kids are using, you know, DNA barcoding technology and the data science that comes along with it to both learn about it, but also contribute to the scientific literature on biodiversity in their area and a few other topics. So I use this cute little slide because we hear a lot about how artificial intelligence is going to solve all our problems, right? And if we just have these huge data sets, we can build models and that will accomplish what we need. And then we hear on the other side that, you know, nobody likes a black box and those things aren't interpretable. And what if we ask the wrong question? And, you know, it's not so much an either or sometimes, right? There are things that, methods like machine learning and, you know, high performance computing are really good at, right? Precision and rapid calculation and objectivity and that sort of thing. And then there's things that human beings are still better at, some elements of perception and abstraction, inference, context, right? Creativity. And so there's a lot of projects in the crowdsourcing and citizen science world that take advantage of that interplay between what computers do best and what people do best. And so I'm showing here some examples that are mainly not in the biomedical sphere, but just because they're clear examples of these kinds of things. Visual processing, people are really good at quickly seeing differences in images, even if those images are not terribly clear. So for example, the USGS has a program where it parcels out images of coastlines taken, for example, before and after a hurricane, so that the public can go in and rapidly annotate places where the coastline has changed in some way that is dramatic or meaningful or needs rapid attention. And then there's areas like annotation and metadata, like we talked about earlier, and sort of conceptual knowledge, where people's kind of conceptual knowledge around a topic helps them to do things like annotate images in archives or annotate and transcribe documents like old weather documents that are sort of these handwritten logs that come from old, the logs of ship captains from hundreds of years ago, right? But they help us understand weather patterns from centuries ago. And then projects like Mark to Cure that's down in the lower right here, where they were using a combination of a data science approach to build up a conceptual understanding of the relationships between concepts in the biomedical literature, but working with people, the general public in this case, to go in and annotate concepts and abstracts as they relate to each other, you know, things like this gene relates to this protein, relates to this disease, that kind of thing, to go back in and better enhance their algorithm. And I think this is one area where this is really clear and where we're seeing a lot of excitement recently in the last few years is in the area of using games and game technologies to do scientific research and biomedical research in particular. And these are not games as in games designed to educate people about science. These are games designed to do science. So for example, up in the upper left there, Fold It. Many of you may have seen that project before. It's one of the oldest of these, if not the oldest. And that's building on the idea that we have we have good protein folding algorithms, and they work rapidly and well to a point. And then the algorithm sort of iterates on that last little bit of, you know, atom by atom by atom sort of optimization of a protein fold. And by contrast, you know, human beings can't look at, or at least I can't, I don't know about you guys, but I can't look at, you know, a big string of amino acids and fold that at all into a protein in my mind. Kind of knowing what it should do next, what that last little fold is that's going to optimize the protein structure there. And so over the years, that project has solved numerous previously unsolved protein structures. And now they're working on design projects where they're designing proteins to interfere with other proteins to use in the clinic and in research. And similarly, the project Eterna there does the same thing with RNA. So designing RNA structures and understanding structures. And then you see down here on the bottom projects like iWire and Eyes on Owls. These are projects where the public comes in and maps these kind of difficult to see connections between neurons in images, often layered two-dimensional images that we're trying to build into a three-dimensional map. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that the public lends their creativity and their incredible puzzle-solving skills to these kinds of projects, and contributes directly to the scientific research. And there's a growing body of literature out there based on the output of these different games. So I just want to show this one quickly to say that, you know, sometimes people worry that game players are a small group of similar people, and you know, like my teenage kids play games, right? But actually all of us, most of us at least, play games of one sort or another. And so these sort of abstracted science games appeal to a lot of people with a lot of creativity. And I just showed this one because you'll all recognize, I think, the person in the image here who was on Twitch the other night playing a very popular game at the moment called Among Us. So we also see games not designed from the ground up, but sort of embedded into existing entertainment games, right? So this is an entertainment game called Borderlands, and embedded in it, if you're in there playing Borderlands and you need some additional points, you can go in and do a little task in this area called Sanctuary 3. You go in and do a task that's related to aligning sequences in the microbiome data, and that will build you up points in the game, and it will also contribute to the scientific endeavor there of the microbiome data. And so we've seen that used a couple of times. We see the use of you know, things like hackathons and game jams and codathons and things like that a lot in research projects. We also see them attached to programs like this. This was the Games for Change conference that happens every year, has associated with it what's called the XR BrainJam Hackathon. And this is the works with the people that are coming to the Games for Change conference, and VR, virtual reality and augmented reality experts come in and work in a setting with, in this case, they've brought in biomedical researchers to work on some problems of build up some VR and AR solutions in the biomedical research space. And they've done this for the last several years. So now moving back from crowdsourcing and citizen science to the general public and back to the idea of reaching a broader community of solvers across disciplines, we've been running over the past several years what we call innovation labs. And some of you may know these as ideas labs or sand pits, depending on where you're from. And the idea of an innovation lab or a sand pit is to bring people who don't know each other from fields that are maybe far apart, but we think really could benefit from working together into kind of an intense setting where they more rapidly get to know each other, get to understand each other's sort of language and approach to working, to a point where they get past those hurdles, and then they can work together to form some teams, think about some project areas, and often pitch some initial projects and get some feedback. And the idea usually for us in an innovation lab is we bring together different groups of people we get them past that sort of communication barrier rapidly in the first couple of days. And by the end of a week, we have new teams of people that didn't know each other before, cross-disciplinary teams proposing pilot projects, getting rapid rounds of feedback on those pilot projects. And in some cases, we have funding available for those pilot projects so that people that leave can get to the point where they're now competitive potentially for an actual grant application. Because one of the barriers that I think we hear about a lot is that people can't get past that first hurdle of meeting people from different fields and forming these interdisciplinary teams and coming together long enough to get the data and the other information that they need to write a grant application. So we've run these in a variety of topics. This one just looks at the intersection between systems biology and the cancer microbiome, which you might think is a really obvious intersection, but we don't actually see a whole lot of work in that area. We see a lot of cancer systems biology, multi-scale mathematical models of cancer processes, for example. And we see a lot of microbiome research in the cancer space, but it's mainly, correlative. Looking at profiles, patterns of gene expression, profiles of microbes correlating with outcomes, for example. And we wanted to bring those two worlds together, and that was the Innovation Lab back in 2019. The other thing that came out of that one was a paper that covered some of the opportunities in that space in addition to the pilot projects. This past year, we just ran two that have to do with this intersection between artificial intelligence and cancer. And in one instance, we were looking at artificial intelligence models, so machine learning, some of the newer deep learning kinds of models with mechanistic models. We see both of those approaches a lot in the cancer world. We typically don't see them together. And we thought there were areas where bringing in some layers or elements of a deep learning method, for example, could augment the mechanistic models, and bringing in some context or insight on the mechanism or some bit of explainability to the machine learning models from the mechanism side could enhance the machine learning approaches. And so that Innovation Lab brought people together across those areas. And then so roughly at the same time, we did another one in conjunction with the National Cancer Institute and the Department of Energy, thinking about this concept of a digital twin, right? So a digital twin in other fields like engineering, you build a digital twin of something like an airplane so that you can perturb the digital airplane and not crash a real airplane. And in order to design it better. And the concept here obviously is to do that with building up a digital, a model of a patient or a set of patients so that you can do those perturbations digitally before you try and treat the patient. We're having another one of these in the spring here, looking at modeling emergent cellular behaviors in cancer. This is taking advantage of the data that is coming from things like the Human Tumor Atlas, where we have single cell resolution data, but in the context of, in the spatial context of a developing tumor, for example. So not just bulk data or single cell data outside of context, but single cell data in that context. And can we use that to begin to model these emergent properties that we see in these multi-scale systems like cancer development? And so these are open for people to apply. And then we take 30 people from different fields and bring them together for these innovation labs. So another sort of project like that is in the cancer, and this is a cancer example, but I think these kind of examples apply across the biomedical research space. I'm using cancer because that's where I'm coming from, and those are the examples that I'm more familiar with, but you can imagine all the same problems in biomedical research broadly. So in this series, we brought together, we were thinking about data visualization in cancer. And by visualization, I don't just mean, like looking at data or, looking at bar graphs or that sort of thing, but how do we, as researchers, interact with data in a useful way? That data gets more and more big and complicated and multimodal and multidisciplinary. And so the ability for cancer researchers in this case to go in and really, manipulate and see that data, understand it in context of other data, for example, is harder and harder. And so could we bring in experts from outside our traditional space? So user experience or design people from outside the field of biomedical research, augmented and virtual reality experts, which are often only in the coming into the cancer space in terms of like simulating surgeries and that sort of thing. But can we get even more creative with the use of those kinds of methods to deal with three-dimensional data? And then, like I was describing before, that the game design community has solved so many data science problems that we have in the biomedical sphere, and the ability to sort of rapidly render and see things at different scales and things that you see in a game, could we use that in the cancer space? And so we ran a series of events where we brought together researchers from the cancer space, so everything from implementation science to the tumor atlas to patient engagement strategies. And we brought in people from VR and AR and game design, et cetera, to have these conversations. And we seeded those conversations with what we sort of thought of as inspiring conversations at the beginning. And I bring that up because those videos are still available on the site that's shown here. We paired, across 5 different microlabs, we paired a cancer researcher with somebody like a game designer or a virtual reality expert, somebody they've never met in a field that they didn't really know. And we asked them each to give a short talk and then to talk with each other. And then we used those conversations to inspire the 100 or so other people that showed up to every microlab to then go off in small groups and talk with each other. And out of that came some opportunity areas, thinking about data from the patient perspective, thinking about seeing data in the context of other data or other scales or whatever, better 3D visualization, that sort of thing. And we're going to use that to launch some additional innovation labs in this space. So thinking about really bringing in some of these farther afield technologies, and not just the technologies, but kind of the experts and the way that they think about data and the way that they think about manipulating things into the cancer research space, that we can be more creative with our visualization efforts. And that brings me to my final slide. And I think we can stop screen sharing here. Do feel free to reach out to us, if you want to talk about any of the funding opportunities that are associated with any of these kinds of approaches or projects. And I'm going to take this off my slideshow here, just so that we can have a conversation now with the folks that have come to the talk here. And I can see everybody in more than teeny tiny vision over on my right side here. All right, so.
Jennifer, you did get a couple of questions.
Okay,
So
cool.
the first one is, are you willing to share the slides?
Sure.
And I think for those, if you want, we can put those into the Slack channel.
Okay.
And then we will drop the Slack channel link in here in just a moment. And then the other question that came up was, has NIH published any guidelines or playbooks on best practices of designing and executing research that uses citizen scientists?
Yeah, so, it's a big, complicated space. And so there have been a number of articles and things published on this topic. There isn't sort of a playbook, but there are a few of them out there. And there's a recent book on team science in which we wrote a chapter or a couple of chapters on crowdsourcing and citizen science in the biomedical space. But yeah, no overarching playbook. It's one of the things that we've been thinking about doing. We're putting together a website with information on citizen science and crowdsourcing. And because I know one of the things people are looking for are resources. There's also a citizen science association out there, right? They're clearly broader than just biomedical citizen science, but they have a journal associated with them that is a journal focused on the methodologies underlying citizen science. And they publish a lot of work that analyzes kind of the different approaches and things. That's an online journal. Let's see.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't think I see anything else in the chat. Does anybody else have questions that they want to speak? Or now that I can see the chat, I'll read them.
I think a follow-up question about the guideline was, I wonder for like NIH grant proposals for studies that propose using citizen scientist kind of approach. I just wonder that, for review and the criteria to judge whether it's a solid design or not. So what are the things the reviewer would look into? That's why
yeah, I think you bring up a question that has kind of two elements to it. One of them is, you know, there are elements, some of these approaches obviously require IRB approval and some don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's an interesting discussion in itself. But in terms of peer review, I think a lot of it depends where the project goes and what kind of project it is. So for example, if you were going to do a design of a game to, you know, do puzzle solving or something,
mm-hmm.
that's probably going to go to a more data science focused study section, for example. So like in the cancer world, we have informatics technology for cancer research, and there are other programs like that around the NIH. And we do see some of these game methods and things show up in reviews there. And the reviews tend to focus on the data science underlying the project. But when you get into sort of the patient engagement end of the spectrum on citizen science, a lot of those go to study sections that are focused on things like behavioral research or you know, things that are a clinical focus and that sort of thing. And then you get those. I think I'm not actually giving you a great answer here. And the reason is it's too diverse. And so I think what I'd suggest is, if you want to think about putting in a project that involves citizen science or crowdsourcing, I would, if I were you, reach out to a program director or more than one of us, right? Always feel free to reach out to any of us and have this conversation, because I think it's going to depend on how you're proposing it and in what kind of context. You know, if this is coming in as part of a, you know, an informatics development project, you know, as a core, or if it's coming in as part of a clinical trial, that's a different kind of review. It's a different kind of setting. You're going to get a different sort of study section looking at it, I think, and that will make a difference to how you think about describing it and the depth to which you want to describe the approach.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I mean, that's my general advice to everybody on everything. Just feel free to reach out to any of us, because I think a lot of times interdisciplinary research and creative approaches like this, there's no one easy place for them to go. There isn't an obvious playbook. And so having a discussion with a program director or more than one of us about what we see happen when we watch things in peer review is probably a good idea before you try and submit. And maybe we can help advise you on a choice of study sections to target, a choice of program announcements, for example, to target that kind of thing. Okay. Do others have questions? Have you guys tried to submit projects using citizen science and crowdsourcing? And is anybody interested in sharing whether that was easy or not? Be interesting for us to know sometime. Let me know. All right. I do find sometimes when fields or approaches are new, that that peer review can be very different, you know, sometimes, and so so it's interesting to know how it plays out in different settings. Okay. Other questions? All righty. Well, Erin, I don't know what the protocol is here. We're at 2:20. I can give people back 10 minutes of their lives to go look at other things, or we can chat amongst ourselves longer.
think if anybody has a question that you'd like to ask Jennifer on the line, you're welcome to here. Otherwise, you are encouraged to join us on our Slack channel. It's in the chat. That is directly to the Citizen Science Slack channel. You can find other data science topics in the pinned post there. I know Chris has already posted a good resource from today. We'll get the slides uploaded. And again, feel free to ask any questions you think of later today or tomorrow. I know Jennifer and Chris are going to help us monitor that channel.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and actually, while we're on here, you guys have the expert behind the Viz stuff here. Chris is the one who's taking the lead on those visualization labs and the upcoming innovation labs in that space. So if you're interested in working in that area, there's your expert. All right.
Good to know. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Jennifer, for presenting, and Chris for being available. And thank you to our captioner who made this available via closed caption for anyone who needed it. We'll also make sure that we have a video posted as soon as possible. It probably will take us about a week that we'll share back out as well.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for asking questions.